submit for the body's consideration the fiscal year 2026 proposed new appropriations for the Department of National Defense and its attached agencies amounting to 305.5 billion pesos. And the breakdown is as follows. For the Office of the Secretary, 2.3 billion pesos. For the Government Arsenal, 2.8 billion pesos. For the National Defense College of the Philippines, 300 million pesos. For the Office of the Civil Defense, 2.6 billion pesos. For the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, 1.6 billion pesos. For the Veterans Memorial Medical Center, 4.9 billion pesos. For the Armed Forces of the Philippines, 290.7 billion pesos. Of the 290.7 billion pesos allocated to the AFP, 145 billion pesos is for the Philippine Army, 60.3 billion pesos is for the Philippine Air Force, 59.9 billion pesos is for the Philippine Navy, and 25 billion pesos is for the General Headquarters AFP and AFP-wide service support units. We likewise submit to the body for the body's consideration the fiscal year 2026 proposed new appropriations of the revised AFP modernization program in an amount of 60 billion pesos under the program appropriations and another 30 billion pesos under the unprogrammed appropriations. Maraming salamat, Senate President.
All right, thank you. The Senator Dante Marcoleta is recognized to interpolate.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you for time accommodation in order to fulfill a very important social obligation today. Mr. President, I'd like to start with defense alliances with the United States, Japan, and Australia. The first question is, to what extent does the 2026 budget assume U.S., Japanese, or Australian support in case of a major WPS contingency?
Well, Mr. President, there's no particular item for the U.S., Japan, and Australian arrangement. It forms part under the visiting forces arrangement, Mr. President, and the exercises being conducted is subsumed under the operational budgets of the different agencies, Mr. President. So there's no particular item for the U.S., for Japan, for Australia. It's subsumed under the exercises being conducted and subsumed under those budgets, Mr. President.
And that will mean, Mr. President, that no critical capabilities are still being outsourced from these allies.
Mr. President, the arrangement between our allies is focused on different aspects, no? Intelligence sharing, cybersecurity partnerships, as well as interoperability arrangements. We also purchase a large amount of our modernization from our allies, particularly Korea and the United States.
But, Mr. President, if we consider the Mutual Defense Treaty between the United States and the Philippines, a treaty which was signed in 1951, I don't think the United States is accomplishing its obligation under the treaty, more particularly Article 2. May I cite a particular provision, Mr. President? Article 2 of the Mutual Defense Treaty says that in order to more effectively achieve the objectives of this treaty, parties, meaning the U.S. and the Philippines, separately and jointly by self-help or mutual aid, will maintain and develop their individual and collective capacity to resist armed attack. Can we say, Mr. President, that at present the Philippines is capable of resisting armed attack?
The answer from the Department of National Defense depends on the degree of the armed attack, Mr. President. And that's why we have interoperability exercises with our allies, Mr. President, so that we can be prepared for any eventuality, including disaster preparedness, Mr. President, which is, I think, a much more critical preparedness activity that we need to endeavor.
The treaty, Mr. President, did not distinguish the nature and kind of armed attack. It just said both parties should be capacitated to repel armed attack. So the question is our country in a position to repel armed attack? Let's say from Vietnam.
Well, it really depends, Mr. President, on the degree of the arm attack, Mr. President. So,
We should consider the strength of the Vietnamese army. Can we just... we cannot imagine how much force or what is the extent of armed attack. These countries who may want to attack us will not tell us. Kaya nga, paano natin magagamit yung Article 2? Is it not proper for us to at least make ourselves capable of whatever attack? That should be the ideal objective. And the Mutual Defense Treaty should be able to accomplish this. This is the main objective. That's why I'm asking you, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, one of the aim of the DND is to continue to modernize our capability, Mr. President. That's why we have allocated 60 billion pesos in the budget to continuously support the modernization of our armed forces, Mr. President.
But that is not answering the question, Mr. President. I'm asking whether our country is in a position to repel armed attack. This is the objective of the Mutual Defense Treaty. If we continuously hide upon the argument that we are perennially being assisted by the United States, Japan, and Australia, we're compromising our sovereignty and strategic autonomy, Mr. President. So ba't meron pa po tayong Mutual Defense Treaty? We cannot even answer the simple question.
Mr. President, with the present capability and the continuous upgrading of our military capability, the objective is to deter instances like what you have mentioned, Mr. President.
You're saying, Mr. President, we are in a position to deter, for example, China from attacking us? Can we now deter China from attacking us?
Yes, Mr. President, the Secretary answered in the affirmative.
So what are the deterrents? Or what is the deterrence, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, as we have seen in the news that our troops are continuously training, continuously holding exercises with our allies. So with the capability of our troops and also with the partnership with our allies, Mr. President, these are the components that can bolster our deterrence, Mr. President.
That is the only answer that you can provide, Mr. President.
Mr. President, that is the objective of the Department of National Defense, Mr. President.
But, Mr. President, I'm asking in relation to the Mutual Defense Treaty. This is a very important treaty. It is, I think, 74 years old. If we maximize that treaty, hindi naman po siguro tatagal. After 74 years, hindi pa po natin masabi na kung ano ang ating napala dito sa Mutual Defense Treaty. Mas matanda pa po sa akin ang treaty ito, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, from my observation, yung interoperability, yung balikatan exercises is a clear evidence that we are operationalizing the treaty. Yung treaty ho, papel lang ho yan eh. Kung hindi ho nating ilalagay yan sa action through the balikatan exercises, through modernizing our capability, to coming up with our own modernization program, hindi ho talaga magiging beneficial yung treaty na yan. So makikita naman ho natin na tuloy-tuloy po ang paglalaan po ng pondo sa ating AFP at tuloy-tuloy rin po nila ginagawa yung kanilang makakaya with the limited budget that we have. No? Sana ho mas malaki, but with the limited budget that we have, yung kanilang mga exercises para po makaresponde ho sila kung ano man ang pwedeng mangyari.
Eh sabi po nyo kanina, Mr. President, wala naman po tayong na-outsource sa ating mga partners. It is inconsistent, Mr. President. Sabi, tinatanong ko po kanina, gaano po sa ating budget ang ma-assume natin na suporta mula sa tatlong mga kaibigan natin? Ang sabi po ninyo, wala.
Yeah. May nabanggit ko ho kanina, like for example, intelligence sharing, nabanggit ko rin, nasabi ko rin ho kanina yung cybersecurity capabilities and cybersecurity capacitation. Yun po yung mga ilan sa mga ina-outsource ho natin. At partnership, hindi lang ho outsourcing, but in my view, these are partnerships. Ang mundo ho naman ay interconnected na ho ngayon at hindi ho natin pwedeng sabihin na tayo lang ang gagawa. So we have partnerships with our allies, Mr. President. But a more detailed discussion should be limited to a executive session, and the Secretary is more than willing to brief His Honor on the details of those outsourcing and partnership, Mr. President. Marami ho dito may national security concern, pero open naman po ang ating Secretary na pag-usapan yun through an executive session.
What clear red lines and conditions has the Philippines communicated to the US, Japan, or Australia regarding the use of EDCA sites, yung joint patrols po natin and exercises, so that our territory is not used for offensive operations unrelated to Philippine defense and security?
Yeah. Well, under the Constitution ho, hindi ho pwede silang magtayo ng base militar ho dito. So itong mga EDCA sites ay ginagamit ho to for joint exercises as well as disaster preparedness. So ang may-ari po ng mga lupa ay tayo pa rin, ang Pilipinas pa rin. Ang nag-ooperate rin po ay tayo pa rin, ang Pilipinas pa rin. So wala ho silang responsibility sa pag-ooperate ho nun.
Given the inclusion of EDCA, Mr. President, EDCA sites near Taiwan Strait and the WPS, what risk assessment has DND made that these facilities will not become targets in a possible US-China conflict, not our own making?
Based on the reply of the good Secretary, their risk assessment is very low, Mr. President.
With the reciprocal access agreement with Japan, enhanced defense cooperation with Australia, what types of operations are explicitly ruled out on Philippine soil or in waters? Example, preemptive strikes, offensive cyber operations, long-range missiles deployments. If you can please specify, Mr. President.
Ang limitation po ay offensive operation and anything that will and anything that will pertain to engagement in war, Mr. President, as an instrument of national policy, Mr. President.
Mr. President, does the Department of National Defense agree that a decision of the Supreme Court interpreting and applying a provision of EDCA automatically becomes part of EDCA itself?
Mr. President, the reply of the Secretary, it's this positive portion reflects that, Mr. President. It automatically becomes part.
Well, the question requires an answer of either yes or no, Mr. President. What is the dispositive portion, Mr. President?
The reply of the Secretary, Mr. President, it's part of the ruling and it's part of the ratio decidendi, Mr. President.
Yes, of course. The decision of the Supreme Court always form part of our legal system, Mr. President. And we're referring to Ochoa, Sagisag versus Ochoa, Mr. President.